Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. For this discussion, I am joined by Joseph Knecht. Joseph is the CEO of a software solution company called Proteus, based out of Lincoln, Nebraska. But he has team members throughout the country and clients all around the country as well. Proteus uses their platform to provide customized software solutions for companies around the world. In addition, their product, Proteus Engage, assists companies in strengthening their relationship with customers and potential customers. I've had the privilege of knowing Joseph for, I think, around 17 years, probably slightly over that now. We were much younger when we started this relationship.
At a certain point, you stopped counting, Darby.
I suppose at some point I should just stop counting. I've just known Joseph for a while. Let's go with that. I've worked with he and his team as a client to solve a number of different business challenges that required a technology solution. And I definitely have come to respect him as a colleague and a friend. For this discussion, Joseph and I will be discussing leadership in the world of startups, as well as the importance of leaders in sales, to understanding the importance of building strong relationships with prospects and the importance it plays in growing a company. Joseph, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Darby.
So you and your company have been heavily focused on innovating new products and services, sometimes for yourselves within your company, sometimes within other companies, sometimes helping to launch other companies. I know that you've personally participated in programs that help newcomers not only learn how to pitch their ideas in the form of pitch competitions and that sort of thing, but you've also helped many source capital for ventures. So startups offer some unique challenges for founders and leadership. As you think about the startup mentality, what advice would you offer to leaders who are just starting out their companies and building their teams on the side of startups, or even just starting up any sort of a business?
Yeah, I mean, I'll use a lot of our track record. We've had a substantial, successful track record, and I think a lot of that is founded in entrepreneurship is great, and startups are awesome, and I embrace. That's one of the greatest things about America is the ability to, when you see a problem, try to go solve it, and then hopefully solve it well enough that it becomes commercializable, that people will exchange money with you and pay you for it, and you get to scale it. It's one of the greatest opportunities and powers that anybody has, and it's a great place to be for that. But I think the real kind of, there's like anything, there's kind of a lot of the media and the hype around startups, and then there's actually the real reality of how hard it is to actually build something from nothing into something of value. And I think it starts with a great idea, no doubt, but I would really focus to your listeners, a lot of it for me is finding a real problem, right? So a true problem that businesses are having, and then validating that with those customers before ever building a company, building a product, building a solution. I've met so many entrepreneurs and unfortunately investors who have put a ton of money into products or companies where the idea still really hasn't, it sounds cool and it sounds like it's going to be awesome, but they've never really talked to customers. They've never really validated with customers that this solves a big enough problem for them, or maybe that the problem really isn't that, it's really, it's not A and B, it's D, E, and F that they're really concerned about. And so I think a takeaway that we've really embraced, and I try to coach and mentor anybody who is talking to me about a product idea, is really talking to the customers. Forget about yourself. Like, you might come up with the idea. It's not about you. It's not about your company. It's not about your product. It's openly and candidly talking with those customers and really seeing if this is solving their problems, or do they see value in this? And don't railroad them to a yes. You need to be able to take candid and more than likely negative feedback, or feedback that you're not maybe wanting to hear a lot of times, but you got to not think of it as negative. It's actually positive, because that's how you're going to build a product and achieve success. So we used to joke that every time we had a new venture or a product idea, that probably 70% of the product idea will change within the first year you're validating it. That means you're only keeping 30%, Darby. So 70% will change. And so people have to feel comfortable to navigate that, to achieve that. An easy one for your listeners to understand is Facebook. I mean, Facebook started as a small applet for college kids to be able to communicate things about classes and maybe go out on dates. Obviously, look at the business model now. You couldn't even get on without an edu email, right? So, I mean, just it will naturally grow over time. Basically, Facebook used the kids in college as basically their validation people to gain feedback and start to really figure out the true business model, which is Meta today.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think the highlight of what you pinpointed there is the listen to your customer side and not just assume your idea is great. I think you and I obviously have both seen situations that people have gone down the path of, I have this great idea and I think it's going to be wonderful, but as it turns out, it ends up not being saleable. And from that standpoint, you can invest a lot from that standpoint before you realize you're in trouble. So,
well, and it's really easy to prove stuff nowadays. I mean, you and I unfortunately have many times around the sun, but when we were obviously in innovation 20 something years ago, just to start an idea, to buy servers, which people are listening to us like, what are you talking? You had to buy servers, and the startup cost of just getting software up and going would be $100 grand. Nowadays, I can do that for $1.50, right? And so access to innovation, or the ability to innovate, is unbelievably awesome. But that gift can also become a curse, because basically that you don't have to innovate everything, and everything shouldn't become a product, and everything isn't a unicorn, and everything isn't a good idea. The large majority of ideas suck. And so how do you suck fast, basically? How do you validate that you kill it and move on to the next idea? And so people just need to embrace that.
Yeah, I seem to remember 20 years ago begging you to run a fiber line 200 yards from one building that had the servers to the other building where my office was located.
Yeah.
And nowadays, fiber is everywhere, and we wouldn't even have a server, and it can travel thousands of miles, not an issue.
No, it's like I said, the access to innovation and the cost is so low. It's great, no doubt. But again, that can also creep into a lot of bad ideas.
So kind of in the same vein of talking about the leadership of that type of an organization, you've worked with a lot of companies, as I've mentioned, some that you were starting, some where you're just trying to help out, some as a vendor. What differences have you seen in the leadership of a highly successful company versus one that struggles to make it?
Yeah, well, natural growth of a company. So I like to frame it a lot of times in monetary. So like 0 to 5 million. A lot of the people you need on your team need to be leaders, independent, strong, but also at most, or most important to me, is a builder mindset. And a builder mindset for me and groups we've seen be successful is that unwavering passion for the problem that we talked about. So that problem that the aforementioned, why we're doing this, but then also unwavering commitment to getting candid feedback. And while they have tremendous ownership in the product and the idea and leading and working through it, they know that there's going to be 95% of the time tough, like super tough, and you're going to get lots of negative feedback. You're going to get a million no's. You're going to get all of these things. But the builder mindset takes that negative energy and converts that into opportunities. And so that is the critical piece, because this game is hard. And if you go into it thinking it's going to be fun and we're going to come up in 2 months, we're going to raise $400 million and then 3 months later IPO, like that's just not the reality. And so when you get into it, and I'm not trying to scare people out of it, just this is what you have to imagine, is it's going to be hard for a year. It's going to be a lot of late nights working through things to be successful. It has to be. This isn't an 8 to 5 job by no means, but most importantly, your mindset. Your mindset has to be taking all that feedback that can be perceived as negative or really put you down in the dumps. You need to convert that into fuel to help you attack that problem and try to solve the opportunity or the challenge that you're working against. So obviously blocking and tackle things like working hard, great communicators, working well as a team. I use the word team a lot because for a company to be successful, it needs everybody to be successful. Sales and marketing, engineering, client success, whatever the side, operations. If one of those legs on a chair breaks or falls, the entire company can fall. So it is a team effort. But most importantly, in that early stage, it's that builder mindset to really drive that innovation and more importantly, help fill your bucket so that you stay positive every day to really drive through the hard times that are still ahead.
Definitely. And that gets to add a lot at the idea of asking folks to think as an owner, and really consider, what would you do? Put the hours in, fix it, innovate something new to replace it, that sort of thing as well. So,
well, and I think the key to that, Darby, is people have to believe in what you're working against, right? Like if I'm making this up, but let's say we're innovating a new dog leash and one of the team members doesn't like dogs. It's probably hard to get fired up every day where I got to convince you that dogs are cool, right? I mean, this is obviously a very simplistic example, but the people need to be passionate about the challenge that they're going on. They don't know what the end solution might be, right? Because that's what you're trying to figure out. But I know when we were starting Proteus Engage, we wanted to improve the prospect experience in a B2B transaction during sales. And then the same thing for customer success. Like, how can customer success individuals have better relationships with their customers on a more continuous basis than episodic, right? And so it's more of, okay, that's the bigger picture challenge we're working against. The how and what exactly we're going to do, we have some hypothesis, but that's why you're talking with the customers, is to figure that out and navigate to success. So it's believing in the mission and less about the tactile every single day. Yeah, that's what I love to do.
yeah. So you mentioned Proteus Engage. Your company has a product called Proteus Engage that specifically helps organizations and sales folks in particular strengthen their relationship with customers and prospects. So aside from obviously closing the sale and bringing in immediate revenue, we all love that. Can you talk about why is that relationship building aspect important?
Yeah, well, every college in America should teach sales, should teach how to build relationships in the modern world. Which is not tweeting and
through a screen.
And not just texting, right? It's about meaningful, deep relationships and kind of to the journey in the business world itself. We recognized 2-3 years ago that there was a kind of a shift in how businesses were contracting with others, where you and I, Darby, in the early days, I had many million-dollar contracts where you would work for a little bit and then sign a large contract with a client, and you'd work with them for 3 to 5 years. But that's completely shifted due to technology. So now companies will sell in, but they're typically selling in a smaller contract to kind of date before they get married. And so you have this a tremendous amount of relationships to navigate not only the initial sales process, but then to kind of cross-sell and grow that client. And so that whole world of the client lifecycle, from prospect to cross-sell, upsell, and growing them, has completely changed. And then due to corporate governance and just the structure of companies and a lot of this virtual world that we're dealing with, there's many more people involved in all sorts of these decisions also, where again, back in the day, it might be a total of 3 people on a transaction. Now you can have upwards of 10 to 20 people on a decision of whether or not we want to buy service A or product B or anything like that. So the world has evolved, how businesses communicate and collaborate, and dramatically inside that complex sales process and account or customer success model.
Yeah, so we talked about that relationship aspect with clients. Now let's talk about a little bit with relationship with team members. And you spoke about this earlier at the beginning, but being a technology company, you've really had an opportunity to lead a pretty diverse workforce, because you have a broad spectrum of types of positions, because you have engineers, you have social media people, you have management type folks as well. Yeah. You attract individuals that in many cases are totally different from some of their coworkers. Yep. That can really present some unique challenges for leaders as they navigate the best way to lead that type of a team. So what are the most important things that a leader should consider when leading such a diverse team?
Yeah, that's a great question, Darby. So a couple of things right off the bat come to mind. One, is embracing that diversity, meaning that everybody from different backgrounds, whether that's obviously technical backgrounds or career backgrounds and also cultural backgrounds. And we have a diverse group. And it's amazing when you can get into open, candid conversations about something we're ideating against and how different perspectives can affect that. it's really, really valuable to corporations to embrace that. The other things that we like to do, more from kind of a philosophy of leadership, is really empower individuals within at least our corporation. We've seen great success with that. So in high growth companies, startups especially, you can't micromanage. You need to divide and conquer, right? And so creating really clear and clean accountability relationships throughout the organization, so everybody knows what they're accountable for, creating visibility to that so that the team can help each other if there's a problem or something challenging that they're stuck on that they need help with, right? And really making people rewarded again for executing against the goals for the week, right? And obviously you can look at a quarterly plan, but we like to look at things in kind of 1 week or 2 week sprints. We're more a technology company, so we use the word sprints, but we use the concept of sprints for everything, for what we're doing marketing wise, for what we're doing with our current clients, like our own QBRs we're doing with clients, or anything that's going on. We kind of look at that at a weekly basis, so we can end the week, celebrate that we've had a really good week. I know one of the things that we really embrace is we do a jump start every day at 10 o'clock, where we get the entire company together. Somebody leads, we rotate leaders, we go through our mission, vision, and the values for the week. We also kudo each other, which is a great way to get people engaged that might not actually engage, especially many of your listeners might be embracing a new digital world where they might not have ever seen any of their coworkers now, or ever will, right? And maybe they're in different departments or divisions. And so it gives a chance to get people together and get to know each other. And we do some fun games and discovery things to get to know everyone. Another big thing we do with that is the red dot concept, which is that's where people can voice if they have a challenge or something that's holding them back from achieving their goals that they've set, and that helps and allows other team members to come in and help and really drive that forward. And then one of the most simple things we do, Darby, in a more digital world now, is we do a Grubhub lunch every 3 weeks, where all the employees get a Grubhub certificate and they can get whatever lunch they want, but we then just kind of have a roadmap of craziness, of random topics that people are working on in their homes, and they're doing this. We got into a whole thing about LED lights, but it really starts to build those connections between everybody. And then of course in future meetings, people remember that and carry it forward. So you got to have fun, especially in a virtual world now, but ultimately it's still business. And so we want to have goals and accountability around everything that we're doing to move the rock forward for the enterprise.
Yeah, that diversity of ideas piece is really important. In my working with you, I know we've seen some cases where you have the highly technical person who says, it works fine, it takes these 15 steps. And then the business person who has to use it goes, yeah, 15 steps is like way too many steps. So it works fine, but not highly usable.
Technically it works, but it doesn't have a great customer experience, right? Or usability.
Yeah, and that goes back to that startup idea too, because you could have a highly technical person who comes up with a great idea, designs something, works with all other technical folks, and they release it and it doesn't sell because nobody wants to use it because it's way too hard to use. But in their heads, it works fine.
Technically, the Wright brothers had a plane, right? But you don't want to fly on that plane nowadays. You would like a G6 or something nicer, right? Like, so they're both technically planes. So if you say you just want a plane, well, there's a big variance there of what a plane might be.
Exactly. Well, I just have 3 questions left that I'm asking everyone that I'm interviewing today. The first one is, what's the most challenging leadership situation that you've been in?
It's a good question. Obviously, the last couple of years have been a challenge, I think, for a lot of leaders, where we were primarily a on-prem enterprise. So most of our operations and teams around the country were all in the offices almost every day, and all those things. And obviously, like many corporations, and I'm sure many of your listeners, have adopted into a more full remote model. And so with that, for us, one, I'm proud of our teams. We did a great job during that experience, but no doubt as a leader, definitely needed to adopt leadership styles and create more visibility on certain things. Many of the things I talked about are now virtualized, and engaging differently with the customers, not only internally with our team members, but also our customers, right? Because it's purely virtual. We used to have some clients fly in and stay in and all sorts of stuff. So we really had to adapt it was a learning curve for us, right? We thought we had a good idea. We tested some concepts after really 2 years ago when it really started to hit hard COVID. But I'm really proud of the team now. So probably the biggest challenge near term was just the morph from being primarily an on-prem enterprise and leadership style where you could walk around and meet people at the cooler and you kind of felt like you were in the loop. And then when you go to completely virtual, there is a drop of that. And so for us, it was trying to figure out ways to continuously connect. We've had some more pocket meetings with certain teams to make sure everybody feels good on direction and making sure that they have access to the individuals they need to keep moving on their progress. So, we incrementally learned over time, but I'd say that was probably one of our biggest challenges, which was an opportunity for us though, too. Just like I said, every negative is a positive. So yes, was it hard for us and very hard for our team members, especially the ones with kids and family at home, especially in the heat of it. There was lots of things we had to learn to try to support them and really create opportunities. But I think we did a great job.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you. Early in the pandemic back in 2020, which seems like so long ago now,
Yeah, it does, yeah.
I was on a group of business leaders that were getting together to talk about challenges and just work through the issues of the pandemic. And everybody, of course, was, it was not a great time in mid 2020. So one of the things I remember saying, though, is here's the thing you all have to remember. Imagine what we're going to learn, because when we get to the backside of this, you will be shocked at the amount of changes that you've made, the amount of innovation that you've had, and all of that sort of thing. And that's really exactly what at least the most successful companies have been able to do. So
yeah,
definitely.
Still figuring it out, right? It's never going to end now, right? So it was awkward and scary at the beginning. People are now getting used to it. And now you're seeing all sorts of different models of it and iterations of it. And it definitely is going to be woven into the fabric of leadership from here on out, that's for sure. And so that's something that leaders need to be aware of is that this isn't going anywhere, especially as you build your company and scale from just needing a couple of resources to a full-blown enterprise where you need different talent sets and things. When most importantly, as a leader, it's a great opportunity to be able to source people around the country now. So there's lots of opportunity to get access to additional talent and making sure that your business not only can properly run that way, but then again, creating the environment that still creates connections between the employees and they're still having fun, but also being able to achieve their daily goals.
Yeah, no doubt. So kind of on the opposite side of that, what's the most rewarding leadership situation you've been in? And in some cases, I've found this could be the same situation, but most rewarding situation.
Obviously for us, it's, for a lot of the times, you think of products almost as like a kid, especially if you take them from startup to enterprise success, just hearing clients, telling you how they're leveraging it and how it's, done really well for them is extremely rewarding. Obviously, it's a representation of all of our team members and their hard work. That's probably on a macro level. On a very minute level, I really get enjoyment. We have many team members who took this opportunity with COVID and changes to virtual to capitalize and grow within our company in new job roles. And seeing somebody who used to do job A now growing and doing job B and sitting in on a meeting with them with an enterprise client and hearing, letting them just run the meeting. I'm just there as, backup, or if any questions, might be needed there. And they do such a great job and they're loving what they're doing. And just seeing their growth is probably one of the most rewarding things you can see, because, it's just like the product feels like your kid, your employees, I don't want to say they feel like my kids, but you're proud of them that they're growing and they're learning and they're driving and they're embracing the moment and taking on the opportunity. There's nothing more rewarding than that. I think as a leader, great leaders really want people to take their jobs over, right? Like that, you want to work your way out of a job as a leader. And I think that's feeling comfortable with that and embracing that can really unlock a lot of things for you.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because that's something that I talk about a lot. I talk about it in my book. Really two pieces that you said there. One being the idea of I get the most joy out of seeing the success of the people that I work with, not so much on myself, but seeing others succeed. So that always makes me feel great. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And the other one you just said, which is when I hire people and when I coach people and I try to develop people, I want them to want to take my job. Like, and sometimes you say that to people and they're like, why would you want that? And I'm like, because it'll keep me challenged until I'm ready to move on to something else or whatever I want to do. And it's going to benefit me and my company anyway.
Yeah, JFK, rising tide moves all ships, right? And I think that's again a little bit different of a change with virtual and less hierarchical business structures and more team-minded activities. Is and if you're a person listening to this that is looking to grow into manager level and leadership levels, your coworkers are not your enemy; they're your friends, and beating them down is not the way to win. Building them up is the way to win. And don't worry, the leaders who are there will recognize that you're building them up, and that will create the opportunities for you to be built up. I think there's a misnomer in kind of competitive nature that there's a winner and a loser mentality in certain fields, sales, client success, you name it. And so people think of it as a combative strategy of growth when it's really leading strategy is going to be where the good businesses are going to recognize those folks and move them and grow them into whatever role that they ever want.
So you might have just answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyway, because maybe you have a different answer you'd like to give in addition. And that is, what's one piece of advice that you would give to new leaders? And when I say new leaders, I don't necessarily mean young leaders, because it could be somebody who just hasn't had an opportunity to take on leading a team and they're just getting into that. It could be somebody who's just looking to the future because that's what they want to do. So what type of advice can you give to those individuals?
Yeah, well, I think quite a few things. I mean, obviously, I still consume a lot of books. Obviously, you got a great book. I listen to a ton of books for innovation and ideas around that. So consumption, putting yourself in new situations, I think is that's how you grow a lot. Is instead of just doing the same thing, trying to take on new projects or new initiatives or new things that maybe take you a little bit out of your normality so that you can kind of grow and grow yourself overall. And then I think I don't know how to articulate this perfectly, but one of the things I've noticed is people who aspire to be leaders sometimes aren't communicating effectively about their goals or their intent with their current leadership or the current people. So making sure that you voice that and try to lay out a growth plan for yourself within the organization, if the organization's big enough. And if it's not, then building a great mentor network for yourself. A lot of my personal development and growth, besides structured groups helping me with coaching and learning, has been just a sphere of influence of anywhere from 10 to 100. I have some friends of mine that have about 100 mentors. That's a little too much for me. I kind of float in that 20 to 30 zone where these individuals, I will talk to them once or twice a year and kind of, system check. How are you doing? What are you learning? This is what I'm learning, and building relationships and a sphere of influence there to help guide you through those moments and personal growth things on your leadership journey. And the great thing about it is on all of these use cases, you have to be willing to be authentic and candid. So if you walk in and you give a guided or protected stance of, like, hey, how are you doing? Everything's great. We have absolutely no problems in the organization. Well, then you feel like you're wasting people's time. If you're able to go and say, hey, Darby, you know what, we're doing really well as a corporation, but, I'm really struggling with team collaboration or accountability or whatever, whatever that thing is. And sometimes those might be personal things, right? Like, hey, Darby, I'm not able to sleep at night. I'm not sleeping real well. All these kinds of concepts, being open and transparent, people really want to help. The inherent nature of individuals and other leaders is they want to help. They're good people, but they only can help you when you tell them what your problem is. They don't have time to figure your problems out. You need to help them understand what your problem is, and then they can help you out.
Yeah, you kind of queued up some of my other discussions with leaders today, because I'm having a discussion about mentorship with someone. And then I'm also having a discussion about the importance of coaching, actually with Jessica Langenberg, who you know.
Oh, yeah.
We'll definitely be getting into that as well.
Yeah, I think the mentorship and trusted network of people is uh, understated, under talked, or that's not even English, but you know what I'm getting at. Like, I feel like it's a tool set that, again, schools and colleges are not teaching, whether that's sales, relationship development, and then in business, having meaningful, trusted relationships to bounce things off of. One of my business partners, Dr. Chen, we always used to say to ourselves I've been with the firm now almost 24 years, he always said, you just want to be able to be a resource for somebody, right? You want to be that person that when they have a trouble or a problem and it has nothing to do with the business you own, they call you and say, hey, Joey, we got a trouble here, or do you know anybody, or what are your thoughts on this? Like, when you start getting those phone calls, you then have a trusted relationship, and people are willing to ask you because they know that you have their best interest in mind. It's not about yourself, it's about helping them. And so that psychology of being a resource for others, when multiplied, not only you doing it for others, but others doing it for you, can be a very powerful guiding light to drive success.
So this wasn't on my list, but you mentioned 24 years with Proteus, and your predecessor names. I think I read, and I probably should have known this, but you started with them as an intern, right?
Yeah. So that's also you're hitting all the fun things I like, Darby. So the other thing, if there's somebody listening is young and in college, number one thing to do is go intern it out. Go get 5 internships, figure out the real world of that. And very blessed. I got into the company as an intern when I was receiving my master's degree and never left. But it was just a real great opportunity to come in, especially in a smaller firm at that time that we were. Interns there in smaller companies are not like coffee fetchers and making PowerPoints. You get into the hustle right away. And so that gives you great experience and visibility into potential career paths for yourself. So I highly push for internships, and the companies love it. And especially in a small to medium-sized business, as an intern, you can demonstrate tremendous impact, which is great for obviously getting fully hired, but no matter what, building up your likes or dislikes of a specific industry or job title. So I'm a huge proponent of internships.
I feel like you're missing an opportunity here, because Intern to CEO sounds like a great book title to me.
It probably is. Yeah. I need to hire an intern to help me write the book.
It's all a matter of time, right?
All a matter of time.
Well, Joseph, thanks for joining me today. I really do appreciate your willingness to talk with me on the intern thing, because I know you hire interns, and also anybody who wants to learn about you. Tell everybody how to learn about you or Proteus Engage, and where they go to do that.
Yeah, everything's on our website, www.proteus.co. So proteus.co, and everything's there, and ways to get to me. Also, my website is just josephknecht.com, which is just my name there. Is my personal website, where we do a lot of speeches and stuff related to a lot of the topics. But really proteus.co.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Remember that my book, The Indispensable Leader, releases today. You can find it everywhere books are sold online, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or my website, beindispensable.com. So order the Indispensable Leader today at beindispensable.com. And remember, don't forget to be indispensable.